The wind howled low through the wire mesh fencing, curling grit around Nera's ankles as she stood in line with the other detainees. Silence hung heavy in the air. Though the war had ended 3 months ago, peace had yet to touch this place. Nera kept her gaze fixed on the cracked concrete below her boots. Her long, pale fingers clutched the frayed cloth of her issued uniform. To speak, to look anyone in the eye, was to remember. And remembering hurt. Beyond the fence, the human supply truck wheezed to a stop. The back unlatched with a clang, and a man in dust-covered clothing climbed down. He moved slowly, deliberately, unlike the other soldiers with their barking orders and hard stares. Elliot. He wasn't a guard, just a civilian medic who had stayed behind to help rebuild. Now he managed logistics, bringing supplies out to the outer sectors where the camp met the ruins of the farming fields. This was his 3rd trip to Sector 9. Nera never acknowledged him. Not until the dust storm came. It blew in from the north, angry, sudden. Guards shouted. People scattered. Nera turned too late, eyes stinging as grit filled the air. Her lungs burned. Then a hand grabbed hers. Firm, calloused, human. Shelter. Come on. She wanted to pull away, but couldn't see, couldn't breathe. She let herself be led, stumbling after him until a door slammed shut behind them. They were inside one of the broken storage units. Elliot was coughing. Nera pressed herself against the far wall. He looked at her, not with pity, but with understanding. "Name's Elliot," he said, voice hoarse. Nera said nothing. "Not expecting you to talk. Just, figured we might be here a while." Her silence filled the room. Minutes passed. The wind screamed outside. She closed her eyes. She hated the sound. It reminded her of the attack ships. "I don't blame you, you know." Her eyes opened. "For the war," Elliot said, settling on the floor. "I was a medic. I saw pain on both sides. Doesn't mean I get to stop trying to help." Still, she said nothing. But for the first time, Nera looked at him. And he didn't look away. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, the space between them, once a battlefield, began to shift. In the days that followed, Nera kept her distance. But Elliot kept appearing. He was never loud. Never intrusive. He'd leave crates with extra canteens, or hang new gloves on fence posts. Sometimes, he'd nod as he passed her group in the fields. Never speaking unless spoken to. Always giving space. Once, Nera saw him kneel beside a collapsed irrigation line, fixing it with a tool that looked too old to work. But it did. She watched from the shade of a shattered wall, unseen. She didn't know why she watched. Only that she did. Another day, a girl in her work team fell from heat exhaustion. The guards shrugged. "Happens," one muttered. Elliot appeared from nowhere. He carried the girl to shade, gave her water, fanned her face. Nera didn't move, but she didn't look away either. That night, when the moonlight crept over the camp's perimeter walls, Nera sat beside her cot and quietly sketched a symbol into the dust, a spiral. Something from home. Something forgotten. She looked toward the garden plots at the camp's edge, barely visible beyond the fences. Maybe nothing could grow here. Maybe everything still could. Morning on Outpost 17 broke not with sunshine, but with the glow of filtered amber light through clouded skies and storm-choked winds. The war had stained everything, including the daylight. Elliot was already in the fields by the time the camp bell rang. His back ached from hauling broken irrigation tubes the day before, but his mind drifted, as it had for days, to the girl in the storage shelter. Nera. She hadn't spoken to him since the storm, not even a nod of acknowledgement. But something had changed in her eyes, that curtain of wary hatred had shifted. It wasn't trust. Not yet. But it was no longer silence born from fear. He unpacked a crate of supplies outside the boundary where Sector 9's workforce began to assemble. The overseer, a thick-jawed woman named Brenna, marked down names and assigned work like she was shuffling pieces on a game board. Nara. Field 5. Irrigation, she barked, without even glancing up. Elliot looked up sharply. Field 5 bordered his small plot. Nara walked with the others, shoulders stiff, eyes always scanning. She passed Elliot without pause, but he noticed a flick of her gaze toward the equipment he carried, a glint of curiosity. By noon, the sun burned faintly above the dust haze. Elliot set down a small packet on a stone near the edge of his plot, tiny seeds, wrapped in a leaf. Beside it, a crude diagram scratched on a scrap of canvas: how to dig rows, how to bury, how to water. He didn't speak. He didn't approach. He just left it. Nara found it at sundown. She didn't react. Didn't ask questions. But 2 mornings later, a small row of disturbed soil appeared beside the broken fence between her sector and his. Freshly turned. Recently watered. Elliot didn't smile. Didn't speak. He simply nodded to himself and went back to his own garden. A week passed. Elliot began to notice things. How Nara lingered a little longer at the water trough. How she glanced at the sky before stepping into the fields. How, sometimes, she hummed a low, almost inaudible note, something strange and lilting. One evening, after loading compost, he noticed something tucked into the crevice of the fence post near where she worked. A small square of fiber cloth. He carefully unfolded it. A drawing. It was a flower. No species he'd ever seen. Its petals spiraled inwards, veins arcing like lightning toward a glowing center. Hand-drawn, delicate, with a precision that suggested memory, not imagination. He stared at it for a long time. That night, Elliot returned to his garden. He dug a space in the center, marked a circle, and the next morning, planted a crude imitation. He used bright pebbles for color, sticks for structure. It looked like a child's sculpture. But it was sincere. When Nara passed by at midday, her gaze paused on the flower. For the first time, she stopped walking. Elliot didn't look up from his shovel. But later that day, he found another scrap of cloth wedged in the fence. This time, it was a landscape. Distant purple mountains. 2 suns. Birds with wings like ribbons. A memory of her world. Days turned. Silence remained between them, but it grew warm instead of cold. One morning, Nara approached. She didn't speak, but she placed a tool, an odd, forked trowel unlike any human design, on Elliot's workbench. Then she returned to her plot. Elliot examined it. Ergonomic, efficient. Alien. He used it that afternoon. The garden became their language. They never met face to face. Never exchanged names again. But through small exchanges, tools, drawings, seeds, gestures, they built something fragile and alive. Nara, who had once flinched at every sound, now stood taller. She braided her hair again. Not as a soldier, but as herself. Elliot, who had once thought himself numb, began to listen again. To feel. One twilight, while harvesting herbs, Elliot found a folded piece of parchment in the dirt. Her handwriting, delicate and curved. I used to teach children how to grow these. I never thought I would see them again. He held the note to his chest. Somewhere nearby, Nara worked in silence. And above them, for the first time in months, the clouds parted to reveal stars. Not all healing came in words. Some bloomed in soil shared between 2 hands that once held pain. Some grew quietly, between rows of things reborn. The summer wind blew hot across the fields of Outpost 17, carrying the scent of sunburnt crops and rusting metal. The dry air cracked lips and tested tempers. But beneath the shimmer of heat, things grew, quietly, stubbornly. Elliot's routine had settled into a rhythm. Wake before dawn, check the irrigation lines, water the crops, deliver tools. If he was lucky, he might glimpse Nera working near the boundary. No words had passed between them in days, but their shared garden had become a sanctuary in the middle of scorched ruin. Then, on a day that started like any other, everything changed. Elliot was guiding a hovercart stacked with mineral nutrient packs toward Field 6 when the drone buzzed low, too low. He glanced up just as the supply hauler tilted unnaturally in the sky. The drone, a clunky holdover from the war, made a strange coughing noise. No, 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 he dropped the cart and sprinted. The drone slammed into the outer wall of a storage barn and exploded into fire and smoke. Shrapnel burst outwards. Elliot raised his arms instinctively. A metal shard slashed across his leg, another struck his side. He hit the ground hard, dazed. When he came to, voices swam in and out. Boots pounded past him. His vision blurred. Then he felt a hand on his forehead. Soft. Careful. Cool. He blinked. Nera. She knelt beside him, her sleeves soaked with blood, his blood. Her face was tight with concentration. No fear. No hesitation. Stay still, she said. Her voice was like wind over sand, rough, but real. She tore strips from her tunic, pressed them against his wound. Her hands moved fast, efficient, wrapping cloth, pressing herbs from her pouch into the gash. He hissed in pain. This will sting. He tried to speak, but she shook her head. Quiet. For the next hour, Nera worked while guards shouted orders and fire crews ran past. No one questioned her. Maybe they didn't see. Maybe they didn't care. Maybe they knew better than to stop someone saving a life. Elliot drifted in and out of consciousness. When he woke again, it was night. He lay on a cot in one of the side cabins. The air smelled of antiseptic and ash. Beside him, curled in a chair with her knees pulled to her chest, was Nera. Asleep. He stared at her in disbelief. She'd stayed. She could have walked away. You're awake. Her voice was quiet. He nodded. You should drink, she handed him a canteen. He drank. It tasted of mint and salt. Thank you, he said. She looked away. You didn't deserve to bleed for this place. Elliot laughed. Then winced. I think I did. Just not today. Nera's eyes lingered on the bandage she had tied. You've done this before, he said. The healing. Yes. Were you, a medic? She shook her head. No, a teacher. My sister, she was a healer. I watched her. Learned enough to help. Elliot smiled. She taught you well. Nera didn't smile back. She didn't survive the third wave. Elliot's smile faded. I'm sorry. Silence fell. Not cold this time. Not uncomfortable. Just full of things they both carried. I lost people too, Elliot said. A brother. A friend. Nera nodded slowly. War eats everyone, she murmured. But it doesn't get to keep everything, Elliot said. He looked at her. Thank you for what you gave back today. For a moment, her eyes filled with something sharp and luminous. I didn't do it for thanks, she said. I did it because, it felt right. He reached for her hand. Paused. Didn't touch. I know. Nera stood. You'll need rest. Will you come back tomorrow? She didn't answer. But the next morning, when the sun rose over Outpost 17, she was there. Watering the garden. Alone. Waiting. Rumors had a way of growing faster than roots in Outpost 17's parched soil. Nera felt it in the way eyes lingered too long on her back when she walked the rows. She saw it in the way the guards glanced at Elliot when he brought her water during long shifts. Once, someone had scrawled a mark on the tool shed door, a symbol she didn't know, but she understood the intent behind it: different didn't belong. The unspoken rule was simple. Humans and captives did not mix. But gardens, like feelings, didn't always obey rules. Elliot waited near the stone wall by the abandoned silo that night. A place left to rot, forgotten by those who made the laws. He had cleared a small path with soft lights hidden beneath crates, shielding the glow. He didn't know if she would come. Then he heard the soft crunch of footsteps. Nera emerged from the shadows, hood drawn low, sleeves covering her hands. "You shouldn't have asked me to meet here," she said quietly. "I didn't ask," Elliot replied. "I hoped." She looked down, then stepped forward. They sat beside each other on a low bench made of rusted metal. Silence stretched between them, full of tension, but no longer fear. "They're talking about us," she said. "Saying things. I know. They think I'm manipulating you. That I don't care." Nera turned to him. "You should. I've seen what fear does to people. I'd rather be talked about than turn my back on someone who helped me survive." She blinked slowly. "You didn't need me." "No," he said. "But I wanted you to stay." The wind shifted. Dry leaves skittered past. Above, clouds moved to reveal a sliver of moonlight. Nera reached into her pocket and pulled out a small bulb. She rolled it between her fingers, then held it out to him. "It blooms only under moonlight," she said. "We call it Liori. It used to grow in the cracks of stone near my village, where even war forgot to look." Elliot took it gently. "We'll plant it in the garden. It may not grow here. Then we'll give it something worth growing for." They sat in silence again, but this time it was soft. Warm. Like the hush of leaves brushing in wind. Elliot looked at her hands. "May I?" Nera hesitated, then nodded. He reached out and touched her hand, slowly, carefully. His fingers curled around hers. She didn't pull away. For the first time, she smiled. "You smile," he said. "Don't get used to it," she murmured. "It's rare. So is peace. But it finds a way," she whispered. Weeks passed. Their meetings continued, quietly, carefully. The garden flourished. The spiral flower Elliot had crafted grew with new vines curling up its edges. Nera added bright stones from her old world, placed in precise arrangements around the base of their plants. Then came the night the patrol caught her. She had lingered too long in the corridor between sectors. The curfew siren had already wailed. She had been walking back from their hidden garden when 3 guards stopped her. "You're not supposed to be out here." Nera kept her head bowed. "Answer." "I lost track of time," she said. "Doing what?" "Planting." They searched her. Found the drawing of Liori tucked inside her tunic. "What's this?" She said nothing. They took her. Elliot found out the next morning. By then, she was already in central control, the administrative core of the camp, surrounded by concrete walls and silent watchers. He demanded to see her. They refused. She broke curfew. She's being evaluated for reassignment. He clenched his fists. She hasn't done anything wrong. That's not your decision. Then whose is it? No one answered. He paced outside the building for hours. The sky wept light rain. No sun that day. Then someone slipped him a note, a folded scrap of paper left on his toolshed bench. Inside, one line. "Don't forget the garden." Elliot stared at it for a long time. Then he picked up the drawing of Liori they had taken from her. And walked toward the tribunal office. He had no rank. No power. Just soil on his hands. And a heart that had learned to bloom. The tribunal chamber was colder than any winter Elliot remembered. Rows of silent faces lined the semicircular dais. Officials, adjudicators, observers, none of them knew Nera. None had ever touched the soil of the outer fields or stood in the shadow of broken silos. They lived in records and protocols. Elliot stood alone. No formal uniform. Just worn boots and a shirt stained with clay. "State your purpose," one of them said. He lifted the drawing of Liori. "This," he said. "This flower. It doesn't exist here." But she tried to grow it anyway. Because she believed something good could still come from this place. Murmurs. A few bored glances. One woman scribbled a note. "She broke curfew," another said. "Left her assigned sector. Concealed unauthorized materials." Elliot nodded. "Yes. To bring beauty back to a world we ruined." "You're not authorized to defend her." "No," he said, voice steady. "I'm not." "Then why are you here?" He looked around the room. "Because I watched her rebuild herself from silence. Because when I bled, she didn't ask what side I was on, she just helped. Because she taught me that the war didn't end the day the bombs stopped falling. It ends when we choose to see each other again." He stepped forward. Held out the drawing. "She drew this for me. Not as a prisoner. Not as a soldier. As a person. She reminded me what it means to feel. To hope. To care." One of the observers shifted uncomfortably. "We're not here for sentiment." Elliot nodded slowly. "No, but maybe that's why everything keeps falling apart." He turned to leave. No more words. Just the truth, left in the air. Nera sat alone in a holding cell, staring at the blank walls. She had not cried. Not once. Not even when they showed her the reassignment list. Then the door opened. A figure stepped inside. "Elliot." She stood. "What happened?" He didn't speak. Just crossed the room and placed the drawing back into her hands. "They released you," he said. "But there's a condition." "Exile." "They won't stop watching you." She folded the drawing. "I've lived in cages before." Elliot looked at her. "We can leave." She blinked. "What?" "There's a shuttle departing tomorrow. Civilian transport. Unmonitored. Destination, Terra 10, Outer Zone. New colonies need laborers." Nera's fingers curled around the edges of the drawing. "You'd come with me?" He stepped closer. "Only if you want me to." For the first time, her voice broke. "I don't want to be alone anymore." He reached for her hand. She didn't flinch. "Then let's go." The morning of their departure was quiet. The sky was painted in faint gold, and the air carried the scent of damp earth and early blooms. Nera stood by the garden one last time. The spiral flower had opened. Liori, fragile and glowing, reached toward the sky. Elliot joined her, a bag slung over his shoulder. "It bloomed," she whispered. He nodded. "So did you." She touched the petals gently, then stepped back. They walked past the gates. No one stopped them. No one called out. At the edge of the horizon, the shuttle waited. Together, they crossed the field. Not as captive and keeper. But as something new. Something more. The shuttle doors sealed behind them with a sigh of hydraulics, the kind that reminded Nera of breathing, not a machine's hiss, but a creature exhaling. Life beginning. Or restarting. Terra 10 shimmered below, a patchwork of greens and gold stretching beyond the curve of the horizon. Its oceans glittered with unfamiliar constellations reflected in the surface. A new world, untouched by the fire of the last war. Elliot sat beside her, shoulder warm against hers. Neither spoke as the craft drifted through atmosphere, past cloud reefs and blue haze. Their hands remained clasped between them, loose, quiet, real. "We're not going back," he said softly. Nera closed her eyes. "No, we're not." They were given a place in Settlement Cluster 3. No buildings, just fabric shelters and a crude mapping of future roads. Pioneers. Volunteers. Survivors. No one asked what species they were, or what side they'd once stood on. Terra 10 was raw. Here, only effort and kindness earned a name. Nera woke early every morning. The soil was loamy and black. Rich. Not like the red crust of Outpost 17. She knelt in the dirt for hours, pressing seeds into rows, her fingers gentle as memory. Elliot worked nearby, laying water lines, repairing collapsed irrigation boxes. Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they didn't. It didn't matter. They were building more than shelter. One night, after a storm rolled through and left the world sparkling with dew, Nera stepped outside and gasped. The Leori had bloomed. Not one, but dozens. The same spiral blossoms she had tried to coax from sterile ground now unfurled beneath a moonlit sky, soft and glowing. Elliot joined her. His smile was quiet. "You saved the seeds." "You saved me," she said. They stood in silence. The wind moved gently through the petals. Nera turned toward him. "Will you plant something with me?" He nodded. "Anything." They marked out a space together. A small circle at the garden's heart. She dug, and he followed, his hand brushing hers beneath the earth. In that soil, they buried their fears. The memories of fire. Of chains. Of loss. And above it, they planted promise. Months passed. Their names became known not for what they were, but for what they gave. Elliot taught others how to tend wounds. Nera taught children how to read roots, how to whisper to seeds so they listened. She smiled often now. Sometimes, she would draw the spiral in the dirt, and children would race to copy it, laughing. Elliot would pause mid-hammering to watch her, and something would soften in his eyes. One evening, they stood at the edge of the growing village. Homes now stood where canvas once fluttered. Fences wound through gardens like gentle hands around hearts. "This isn't a perfect world," he said. "But it's ours," she replied. He turned to her. "And you?" She tilted her head. "What about me? Are you mine?" Nera didn't answer immediately. She stepped close, resting her forehead to his. "I was never anyone's. But I chose to be yours." He exhaled like he hadn't since the war ended. Their kiss wasn't a declaration. It was a planting. Of everything they had been. And everything they would become. At the center of the settlement, where the first garden had bloomed, they placed a stone. No names. No flag. Just a carving. Of a spiral. Growing outward. Where new earth grows. Spring arrived early on Terra 10, or maybe time just felt different in a place where hope grew faster than calendars could keep up. By now, the spiral blossoms of Leori curled around archways and rooftops, their glow dimming in daylight and flaring bright at dusk. Elliot's mornings began with the scent of fresh soil and quiet laughter from the children Nera had taken to teaching beneath the orchard trees. It was a school in nothing but name, just a few wooden benches and a slate board nailed to a stump, but it thrived like everything she touched. Sometimes, Elliot watched her from a distance. Not to protect. Not to interfere. But simply to remember how far they had both come. "You're brooding again," Nera said one afternoon, brushing dirt from her hands as she approached him by the irrigation trenches. "Thinking," Elliot corrected. "About? How lucky I am you didn't let that storm blow me away back on Outpost 17. She smiled. "You were the one who grabbed my hand." And you didn't let go. Nera looked out across the settlement. Vines crept up the solar arrays. Food grew beside homes, not apart from them. Children ran through open paths with no fences, only flower beds. We should expand, she said. Further east. There's good soil beyond the ridge. Elliot raised a brow. You want to start another garden? I want to start another village. He blinked. Are you serious? She nodded. There are more survivors coming every week. Displaced families. People with no past left to cling to. They need a place to plant new roots. And you want to lead them? Not lead, she said. Just show them where to begin. He laughed softly. Then we'd better get more tools. By the end of that month, the expansion was underway. With the help of a dozen settlers, they carved a trail east through the dense brush, clearing plots, marking terrain. Elliot's hands bled again from hauling stone. Nera taught children how to check the wind before planting. At night, they fell asleep curled together beneath the stars, exhausted and content. News traveled. Terra 10 had been designated as a diplomatic restoration zone. Interspecies delegations arrived, not as conquerors, but as witnesses. One morning, a ship bearing a sigil Nera hadn't seen since before her capture landed at the edge of the field. She froze. Elliot took her hand. You don't have to speak to them. I want to, she said. I need to. Inside the ship, a young envoy met her with a trembling voice. He bowed. They said you were gone. I was, she replied. But I found something worth returning for. Your people, our people, they still believe we lost the war. Nera shook her head. The war was never ours to win. But we can choose what we become after it. She brought him to the garden. Showed him the spiral stone. Introduced him to Elliot. Then, with open palms, she handed him a satchel of seeds. Take them back, she said. Show them how to grow. The envoy left. But others came. Not just to see, but to join. The settlement became a haven. No flags flew. No armies stood. Just shared work and food and stories. And at the center of it all, the original garden bloomed larger than ever. On its anniversary, they held a celebration. Children danced. Elders cooked. Nera and Elliot stood beside the spiral stone as lanterns rose into the sky. He turned to her. This was never just about survival, was it? No, she said. This was always about beginning again. With me? She reached up, brushing his cheek. Always. Beneath the rising lights, their kiss sealed more than love. It sealed a future sown from scars. Seeds that would grow beyond stars.